Morning. Morning. Okay. Sivaditya. Good morning, Ra. Jeena Priya. Good morning. Akshaya. Good morning. Okay. So today we're going to discuss a quick outline of the 11 portions as started from today. So the first lesson is living word. As we see this living word for NEET, you see the weightage of the chapter. No, it's almost 3 to 4%. No, within this first unit of first year, you got 4% of questions may be asked from these chapters. So that's why I kept important chapters before these chapters itself. Okay, so you may be there are chances two to three questions may be asked. Okay. So from today onwards, where 11th standard portions are going to start for your batch. So if you see, today is living world, and Monday you have biological classification. Tuesday, Wednesday you have plant kingdom, right? And then morphology of flowering plants, and then anatomy. So what we going to do is that we will quickly finish these things, and we will go for plant physiology as well. Okay, so I expect you guys to pay utmost attention when the 11th portions are going to take further revision classes, especially these classes outline. And the other next type of video is that 2 to 3 p.m. videos will be released. That is brief discussion on entire chapter. This is quick outline. Within half an hour, we'll complete important aspects in a NEET perspective. We'll be discussing. And the next type of videos is a brief discussion on entire chapter. And the third type of video is that detailed discussion, right? Detailed discussion of each topic, right? That is 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. I will be releasing those videos. So make use of all these three type of videos, right? And when it comes to 11th standard portions, obviously I'll be using animations as well. So as of now, the living world doesn't really require much of the clarifications. It's a very easy chapter. So let's quickly go through the contents. Am I audible? Am I audible? Is that clear? Please do interact. Like, let me know if I'm audible, or you are able to see, or is there any buffering is going on, or is it okay? Shall we continue? Shall we start? Or okay, fine. Let's continue. Okay, now. So I'm saying I'm again reminding you guys from today onwards, 11th standard portion starts, right? So in botany already 11th standard portions have started from today. And when it comes to zoology part, from Monday you will be finding 11th standard portions will be started. So we'll be starting with animal kingdom, which is very important. So please keep in mind that these three types of videos never miss. Okay, fine. So let's move on. So when we talk about living world, right? So we have to understand one aspect. So first we need to understand, what exactly, you know, characteristic of a living. For example, if you take viruses, they are both living and non-living. So if you take that as an example, what makes it living, what makes it non-living? So outside a living system, outside a living, living host, it cannot really reproduce itself. It cannot increase its number. It cannot replicate, right? It just stays as a particle, inactivated particle. It doesn't have any role to do outside the host. So likewise, when we talk about living, right? So we have to first understand. So what exactly living? What exactly non-living? So then we will talk about characteristics of living, right? For example, we have different characteristics of living, and then we'll be talking about diversity of living as well. So first, for example, in evolution chapter yesterday also we discussed that how the first cell has formed. So before first cell has formed, the very primitive cell, or the very primitive cell, which doesn't have all these organic molecules, is not at all functioning. Once these are all absorbed into this cell, and it acquired few living few living characteristics. At the primitive cell stage, you may not find all living characteristics may not be existing in it, but basic requirement like replication or division, right? Uh, right. These are the important aspects that you might have find in first formed cells. Later on, it kept on evolving, and then we found unicellular prokaryotic cells, and then metabolisms, and then autotrophism, and then finally we have got holozoic nutrition. There are evolution of nutritions as well. So based upon the nutrition, based upon the habitat, we will be we will be categorizing all the organisms. That will be discussed in the next lesson. Biological classification is pretty interesting if you really read, in that sense. If you guys keep reading the text just like that, it is nowhere interesting. But we'll try to relate, or we'll try to compare what makes this classification, you know quite suitable to the present situation, in the sense like, if you see the classifications also, we have got different classifications. So all those things will be explained next lesson, right? So how the nutrition has been developed, etc., right? So but here we will be talking about the different characteristics of living, right? So we have to define living, and when it comes to living and their characteristics, okay, you may be getting questions in correct or incorrect statements. Okay, so if you see this characteristics of living, probably, for example, it needs to have growth, it needs to have reproduction. At the same time, it has to sense the environment as well. It has to get the, it has to get the stimulus, and then it has to respond, right? So these are the few features, but when we go in depth, we even see at the biochemical level, it needs to have metabolism. So it needs to undergo different chemical reaction utilizing enzymes. It needs to produce food, or it needs to break down the food, assimilate, or it needs to self-replicate itself. For example, DNA molecule self-replication, and even that DNA control this cell to self-replicate and divide, mitosis by mitotic, or it needs to be self-organized, right? This, if you consider these are all cells, so they are organized as a tissue. So that organization is also one of the important characteristics of a living, right? Then once all these characters are satisfied by certain, uh, once these are all satisfied, then we can say as living, right? So now let's move to the. I will give mind map and flow chart for this outline of this lesson as well. Very clearly it will be there. Okay, so if you see here, first we will see this characteristics of living beings. So if you see this characteristics of living being, we have different types of characters. So if you be it any syllabus, for example, metric or CBSE or ICSE, these concepts remains the same. So uh, I request our metric students to go download the NCERT books, e-books that I already given. The link was already given. If you don't have that link, please ask me. I will provide that. Okay. Let's move to the characteristics of living being. So if you see the characteristics of living being, it will be, you will be finding metabolism as a characteristic of living. Thermoregulation, it means the temperature regulation, reproduction, adaptation, consciousness. Now we both are talking, right? So it is at the level of consciousness, like we have what exactly, we say non-living is that this doesn't have any consciousness, right? So consciousness is nothing but to ability, one of the character is that it is the organism is able to sense its environment. Okay, and then it shows some sort of irritability, right? That is one of the important aspects. And then reproduction, we have different types of reproduction. It means reproduction is nothing but the process of producing young ones by living things. So if you say this is a process, the reproduction needs to occur, but the reproduction is of different types, right? So when we come to reproduction, we have got asexual reproduction mode and the sexual reproduction mode also. So based upon these modes of reproduction, right, the organism is able to live. So if there is if there is a cessation of reproduction, maybe a few more in few more days you may not find many of the organisms. They get extinct, or they may not be living because they can't really no pass these genes from one generation to other generation. So obviously when the reproductive rate or the reproduction getting affected, obviously you can't see those species as well. But this reproduction makes this living or organisms living, right? This can't be reproduced, but like if you can see that in the syrup bottles, like the tonic bottles or syrup bottles, what happens is there would be formation of crystals. So crystal formation is something self-replicating at the same time. They are increasing in number, but that doesn't really qualify as living. So likewise, we need to understand when it comes to reproduction statements, what makes it living, what makes it non-living. Those statements, incorrect or correct statements, are utmost important that you need to take care. And in NCERT this would be little confusing also, but you need I'll be giving a worksheet with the mind map. You can go through it. Okay, so we take any example that planaria, amoeba, right? Unicellular organism like amoeba, so they are able to reproduce and they are able to pass their genes to the next, or they are able to create the offsprings, so that that entire lineage would be continuing. But if you see the exceptional cases, right, we produce mules, right? In animal breeding, we talked about hybrids, right? So when we cross this horse and donkey, we got the mules. Mules are sterile actually, right? For example, worker bees are sterile, or few infertile human couples also will be there. So what we can say is reproduction also, we cannot just be in, we can tell that we can't tell that it has to be an inclusive definition of living characteristic of living organism. Means though we don't possess the ability to reproduce, still we are living. So it is this alone, this reproduction alone cannot be defining, inclusively cannot be defining as a living. So because we have got exceptions like infertile humans, at the same time mules, right? So and if you say sterile worker bees, though they are not able to reproduce, but they still possess other living characteristics. So this reproduction, when it comes to this reproductive characteristic, you need to more focus on the examples, exceptions, so that they may be asking as correct or incorrect statements. Is that clear? Is that clear, guys? Understood? Are you able to follow? Yeah, fine. Great. So let's move to the next aspect, that is cellular organization. If you see this cellular organization, you will be finding it is one of the defining character of the living. And if you see the cellular organization, you will be finding this composition and arrangement of cells in the body. So if you take this hand, see how these cells are arranged as tissue, right? So this programming of arrangement or gene expression would be you will be seeing in living organism. And this arrangement of cells or cell organization can be of unicellular organization or multicellular organization, which can form unicellular or multicellular organisms, right? So from multicellular organism, if you see the animal kingdom, it starts with the few for example sponges, and then hydra, right? And then when we talk about unicellular organisms, it starts with amoeba. So we can take these examples as an when we talk about unicellular or multicellular organisms under cellular organization. So this living organisms needs to have this ability to organize themselves. In the sense, the cellular organization is one of the defining feature of the life forms. Okay. Okay. So here you need to focus on the next aspect, that is metabolism. So when we talk about metabolism, right? So this metabolism, especially if you would have seen this physiology of human or or plant, you would have observed this metabolic processes, formation, at the same time breaking down metabolisms. That is catabolism, which is process of breaking down of complex molecules to or complex substances to simpler ones. For example, you take respiration as an example, which occurs in mitochondria. What happens in respiration? What exactly happens in respiration? Please do respond in comment section. Respiration. I'm asking about cellular respiration. What is it? Cellular respiration. What exactly it contains? What happens during cellular respiration? Is it a catabolic process or anabolic process? What happens during cellular respiration? Okay, I'm asking about cellular respiration, not at external respiration. I'm not asking about breathing. So when we talk about this breathing of gases, right? We talk right from the inhalation and exhalation, and then we will talk about different stages. until the cellular respiration, until the formation of this CO2 at the mitochondria, and then it comes into the hemoglobin, I mean the red blood cell. That is cellular respiration. So at the cellular respiration, gaseous exchange takes place, and here it's a mechanical breathing, inhalation, exhalation. But I'm asking about cellular respiration. What exactly respiration means at the level of cells? Is it a catabolic process or anabolic process? See, these chapters looks very small. At the same time, you can keep, people who mug up these chapters, right? As they can't really, and if you guys are not understanding, and if you guys mug up or keep memorizing things, it's very difficult with this type of concepts, right? So that's why I usually insist students to understand and then read. If you guys have any doubts, you can ask me at that any point of time. So what exactly the cellular respiration is? Nothing but it is one of the catabolic process where you can see that at this glucose that we take, which we intake during this digestion process, is absorption and assimilation process. This glucose would be catabolized. It means broken down into usable form. In the sense, usable form in the sense like ATP. So when the ATP is generated by using glucose, it will be releasing by end products or waste products like CO2. Right? So that's the cellular respiration is one of the catabolic process and one of the breaking down process. If you take photosynthesis, it's a formation, right? What exactly it's forming? It's an anabolic process where exactly the glucose is formed. It's utilizing 6 CO2 molecules. If you would have remembered the photosynthesis formula, right? The 6 CO2 is there, right? The 6 CO2 would be converted into this glucose, one glucose molecule. So this is something formation, reaction, or metabolism. So this type of formation reaction we call it as anabolism. And if you take the cellular respiration, we are breaking down of this glucose molecule into a by and producing ATP and then further CO2. That process we call it as catabolism. So any reaction which actually breaks down, which makes it catabolism. Any reaction which makes or which actually combines the simpler molecules to form a complex molecule, it's an anabolism. So this metabolism makes a very important aspect of a living organism or a living cell. If you see the metabolic pathways that we have it in a cell, okay, metabolic pathways in cell, it's a huge network actually. Okay, I'll just I already shown during one of my classes. So how complex the network of the uh, you know uh, this this metabolisms will be there. So I already talked about that, right? So I will try to show one image so that you can really get the sense of what exactly just a kind of a recap, right? I'll try to put those metabolic pathways. So if I have to drag this, just a minute. Yeah, a set of metabolic reaction that takes place in the cells to convert chemical energy to it. Yeah, correct. Yeah, so this is correct actually. So inhalation, exhalation is something external respiration. Okay. So there are n number of metabolic pathways. You will be there, and I will try to share the link of this. Uh, if you see this, uh, you better want to see this. Link. If you click this link, you will find a image. You can see, get the sense of how many pathways does a cell undergoes. So this metabolism is a huge network. One pathway would be connected to other pathway, and other intermediate products would be an substrates for other metabolic pathways. So these are all interlinked actually. So very fascinating actually. So these metabolic pathways are very, very, very important to define a organism or any substance as an uh, you know living or non-living, right? So metabolism is nothing but a series of chemical reactions which are catalyzed by enzymes. So that can be breaking down type of metabolism, that is catabolism, or formation, right? Formation of complex substances from simple substances, that is anabolism, photosynthesis and respiration. And then comes to the growth. The next aspect is growth. Growth is one of the important characteristics, that the living organism grow with increase in mass and number of cells. So if you see this number of cells or the number of individuals, for example, if it is a asexual type of reproduction, at one shot, this at a time, many organism, many what do you say, many cells would form, right? So binary fusion, you have a different, growth aspects, right? So growth is one of the important aspect where the number of cells or the mass of the individual may be increasing. So growth should be one of the important living characteristic. And then thermoregulation, the process that allows your body to maintain its core internal temperature. So, for example, we are all regulators. There are some conformers are there. There are partial regulators are there, right? So we are regulators which actually maintain internal temperature, in a pretty much stable way. So to maintain or to regulate that heat also, it is one of the important living aspect, right? So for example, there are two aspects in thermoregulation. One is heat stroke and one is hypothermia. So hypothermia is something decreasing body temperature. So for example, if we visit polar regions, and suddenly we may find our body temperature would drop than the normal. So that is hypothermia condition. Especially this cardiovascular patients may find this very difficult to live in this polar regions or this very low temperature regions, when they suddenly shift from this equatorial regions or tropical or subtropical regions to the polar or the temperate regions. So that makes it hypothermia condition. So somehow it tries to regulate the body temperature. Like that, heat stroke is sudden increase in the body temperature above the normal level. So that's what we become dehydrated as well. And then coming to adaptation, or living organisms, we show different types of adaptations, and then we adapt to certain environment. For example, in organisms and population, we already talked about adaptations, right? Have you remember? We talked about hibernation, estivation, intersequence, summer sleeps, right? So it is a temporary change, a temporary behavior for the short-term adaptation, a short-term adverse climatic situations. And then long-term adaptations are nothing but permanent changes, occurs in the organism according to the changing environment. So these are the long-term adaptations. So adaptations, metabolisms, thermoregulation, consciousness is nothing but ability to sense the stimuli from the external environments, right? And then it needs to even display the irritability as well. And then finally reproduction, and then cellular organization and growth. So these are all the 6 to 7, or these are all the important aspects of or characteristics of the living. Is it clear? Right, so let's move on to the next aspect. So I stayed on this aspect, that is characteristics of living, because you may go wrong when they are asking when they ask these characteristics of living, whether they are correct or incorrect statements. So I am explaining here. I'm taking more time here because they are utmost important. There are chances that you may get confused. So please try to read this thoroughly and try to understand, make sense of all these things. If you have running notes also, you can go back and you can refer this. So especially our 11th standard biology students may have running notes with them, right? Especially for these chapters. So please do make use of that. Yeah. So next aspect, what we gonna learn is, so far we learned about the living characteristics, and then when we talk about the diversity of the living organism, so what makes it diversity? So we already talked in biodiversity lesson. So the diversity or the variation or the variety in the living organisms makes it diversity, and how that diversity created we already discussed, and different variation from at the gene level to the response to environment, and then the gene expression and different adaptations we talked in evolution also, that is convergent divergent evolutions, that makes this more variation in the living organisms. And to when this much of variation is there, right, so how can we really study them, right? So this much of variability, that is the degree of variability among the living organisms is too much actually. So humans are there, at the same time in plants there are n number of plants, right? In microorganisms there are different types of microorganisms, right? So within an ecosystem, if you see that there would be a lot of biodiversity, right? So this biodiversity includes a different variety of plants, animals, and other organisms, right? So that makes this complexity in the ecology, in studying the ecology. So for that matter, we wanted to actually, we wanted to, if we wanted to study this biodiversity at the species level, at the genus level, so what we have to do is first we need to apply certain studies like systematics. So systematics is an approach where to study biodiversity, but it attempts to classify the diversity of organisms on the basis of different fields. So what we are doing is the entire biodiversity existing in the biosphere, Earth. We are trying to understand, or if you wanted to study, we apply this systematic study. So in the systematic study, we thoroughly classify this diversity of organisms based upon certain fields. So here we have got four fields. One is identification, other is classification. We will be using one more field, that is nomenclature, right? And then taxonomy. So when we talk about this systematics, we use this following approaches or following fields to really you know classify this diversity in the living organisms. So we know what is identification. So what is identification, what is classification, what is nomenclature? These are all the terms and their concept may be asked as correct or incorrect statements, right? So when we aim to identify any organism, we need to identify with the correct name, right? Correct name, right? So we need to even check with whether that organism is already identified or not with the already existing classification systems, right? So here definition of key, K-E-Y. So here the definition of key and the concept of key is important. So how can we really identify whether this organism, which now we identified as already existing in before classification or not, that we use keys, keys to understand whether they are already existing. So what is a key actually? Key is nothing but a list of alternative characters found in organisms. So if an organism can be identified easily by selecting and eliminating the characters present in the key. So we will try to put all the different characteristics in this key. So based upon this key, we will try to match, so that we can really identify whether these characteristics, an organism which is already present with these characteristics or not. So based upon this key, we can identify exact we can really we can actually identify with the correct name and position of an organism. So here the keys are used, and key is nothing but a list of alternate characteristics found in organism. So based upon this list of characteristics, alternate characteristics, we can actually distinguish or compare and contrast, or we can really identify any species. So this identification is very much important. Next one is classification. Classification, we know that the arrangement of grouping of organisms, based upon the taxa, right? It starts with a single unit. The basic unit of the tag, classification is species. Species, genus, family, order, class, and phylum and kingdom. Right? If it is a plant classification, we will talk. Instead of phylum, we use division, subdivision, and then kingdom. Right? So smallest unit or the basic unit is species, where we start with the species, and then it's under the kingdom we will get all this taxas, right? So this based upon the fundamental characteristics, we will talk about this classification in biological classification second lesson, right? In detail, right? In detail, I will be discussing how we can really classify organisms. As of now, you remember that this classification, the order of classification is right from the kingdom to species, right? So the if you see this, this is a hierarchical arrangement, right? If you take this hierarchical arrangement in decreasing order, it is kingdom to species. Increasing order means species to kingdom. So most probably in decreasing order, we'll see most it means different species are this same similar species put together in genus, similar genuses are put together in family, similar families with characteristics would be put together in order, and then class, and then phylum and kingdom. We'll be discussing in biological classification. Then comes the nomenclature, which is important for once we identify, we have to name it, so that to avoid confusion, we don't use any vernacular language. So we use a systemic scientific naming of the organism with approach. If we take this coding, right, we can call this as a coding also nomenclature. So if you see this codes for biological nomenclature, which is actually introduced by the system of nomenclature proposed by binomial nomenclature, the system of nomenclature proposed by Carolus Linnaeus, right, who is a Swedish botanist, right? So why we actually use certain aspects or certain coding systems is to avoid confusions, right? So here in NCERT they didn't cover much about it, but here in worksheet I will be giving. So different codes of nomenclature we follow. So and this will clear ambiguity, at the same time duplication, and even avoids the errors. So this is very much important. So if you see the codes that we use for this nomenclature, right? If we talk about the codes that we use in nomenclature, we have ICBN, ICZN, ICVN. VN is viral nomenclature. We have ICNB, International Code for Nomenclature of Bacteria, and we have got International Code for Nomenclature for Cultivated Plants. So when we have these codes, we use almost five different codes, so that based upon these codes only they will be classified. So it will be avoiding a lot of confusions. right? So detailed discussion of this chapter will be discussed in next type of videos, right? So as of now, the outline is concerned. Let's quickly go through the remaining part of the lesson. So when we talk about this nomenclature, we have got specifications of nomenclature. For example, if you take ICBM, has certain certain specifications. So it means when we not when we set for nomenclature, when we sit to nomenclature, when we wanted to name a organism, we have to see these different types. These specificities needs to be followed. For example, we have holotype, isotype, neotype, lectotype, paratype, syntype. So these are all different specifications you will be finding in nomenclature. So each definition would have been covered in your academics as well, right? So during this detailed discussion of this chapter, I will be covering these definitions. So specifications in nomenclature, their names and definitions are utmost important because they may give in column A holotype, isotype, neotype, and lectotype, and they may give different characteristics. So you need to match them. Okay, and then coming to the next aspect, that is taxonomical characteristics. We already talked about each what do you say, there are various branches of taxonomy also. So few students ask me doubts in this lesson as well. That is, sir, what is alpha taxonomy? What is natural taxonomy? What is chemotaxonomy, etc. So when we talk about taxonomy, we have different types of branches of taxonomy. So in worksheet, I'm going to give, that is, taxonomic field will be there and the basis will be there. For example, you take chemotaxonomy. So chemotaxonomy is what is a how we use that chemotaxonomy. It is basis is presence or absence of certain chemicals in the cells or tissue. So based upon this, we will be applying this chemotaxonomy, cytotaxonomy, natural taxonomy, and their basis. So you may get column A, column B type of questions in this type of concepts. So when we talk about this taxonomic ranking and taxonomic categories, we have plants and animals. So animals is we start with again from in the increasing order: species, genus, family, order, class, phylum, and kingdom. But when it comes to plants, we instead of phylum we use division and subdivision. So this is a hierarchy of the taxonomy characteristics. So each definition: what is kingdom, what is phylum or division, what is class, what is order, what is family, examples, all these are essential in this lesson. Okay, so who actually who actually proposed one of these taxons also, you need to focus. Okay, the scientist names I am giving in worksheet, nothing to worry. And then finally, we will be talking about taxonomical aids. When we talk about taxonomical aids, we will be talking about, what are these taxonomical aids? So these are all techniques or procedures or, accessing of the stored information for identification and classification of organism. So the purpose of this taxonomical aids, for example, I can use this as a teaching aid. Aid is something which is a prop or which is an article or a substance or a information we use to as a tool we can use. So I can use this as a teaching aid, or I can use any one of this as a teaching aid. Like that, these taxonomical aids are used, right, for actually identification and classification of organisms. So different taxonomical aids like keys, museum, herbarium, and catalogs, monographs, and botanical and geological parks, their examples, their definitions, and where exactly they use. These are the important aspects you need to cover. When I take this lesson afternoon session, that is 2 to 3 session, that is a full and brief discussion of this lesson, you can get more detailed discussion in that. So you need to focus on the focus what is a when it comes to NEET perspective, you need to focus on this taxonomical aids, their definitions, and where exactly they are used. Examples. That's it. Nothing more than that. So with this, we completed this lesson. So I hope you guys really find it useful. If I'm not wrong, because I've explained a few concepts at the same time. I gave highlights and important concepts within this lesson. So today afternoon 2 to 3 p.m. I will try to I'll be coming live again, and I will be taking this lesson brief account. Every single word can be explained again, and with more examples also I will be taking. So the content would be different, but the concepts remain the same. So it would be a more thorough approach, entire brief account. Okay. So I will be explaining each of the concept in a brief manner. And the third type of video I will be releasing a detailed discussion. If I take taxonomical aids, I will take as a part one, and I will discuss the entire taxonomical aids on that day, maybe one session, or part one, part two, part three, like that. So I hope you really enjoyed this session, and it is very much useful for you. So that is the only intention. So please leave feedback. At the same time, please do subscribe if you didn't do subscribe so far. Please hit the notification bell icon so that you will get notification at least thrice or four times a day. You will be finding notifications from this Super 6 Education channel. So I am trying to put all the 38 lessons in a three different perspective for benefit of the NEET students as well as academic students. Please do make use of it. Please share as much as you can. Thank you guys. If you have any doubts, you can ask. Is it clear? Are you able to follow? Is it clear, guys? Please. Yeah. So okay, guys. Then I think you guys utilize this session. Please do share to your friends, metrics friends, and CBSE friends, whoever are preparing for NEET. So it will be very, very useful. You can sit with me and learn and revise, so that within no time you can finish the entire chapter without any distraction. That is a whole agenda. Thank you, guys. Stay safe, stay home.